Pardon me while I have a strange interlude.
There is nothing else. Life is an obscure hobo bumming a ride on the omnibus of art.
Along the misty corridors of time, and in those corridors I see figures, strange figures.
Welcome back, my friends, to the AP Strange Show. I'm your host, AP Strange, and this is my show. And this week's show is brought to you by the Christopher Dane Story Recycler. If you're a writer and you only have a limited amount of stories, or just need to crank out a whole lot of print in a short amount of time using the limited stories you have available to you, the Christopher Dane method is a non-AI way to just remix and replug in the stories you already have, and it comes with a nom de plume generator as well. So that's really good for you if you're short on time, short on stories, but really want to crank out the print. So that being said, we have a wonderful show tonight. This is going to be a lot of fun because those listeners who have followed me for a while know that I'm a rabid book collector and I love old books, and especially like 70s paperbacks and like 60s and Fate magazines and things. So naturally, I was a fan of, once I discovered this blog, Paperbacks of the Gods, and its author, Dr. Jerrold Coe. He's not really a doctor, but he is a real Coe, sort of. And I was enamored with the site the first time I got on it because it's just full of such good stuff. All these crazy old paperbacks, deep dives, and tracing the histories of them. Sometimes uploading entire volumes that are scanned, or directing to where you could find them, and a lot of great information. So I had to get Jerry Coe on the show to talk about some of these crazy books, because I don't think I'm alone as far as people who listen to the show and loving those weird old paperbacks. So welcome to the show, Jerry.
Thank you very much, AP. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here with the books to talk about the books.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we kind of got carried away before I hit the record button, and I was saying, well, we can't burn too much good stuff. We got, yeah. And for listeners, this is an audio medium, but Jerry is currently surrounded by books just everywhere, so it's pretty great. Just he's showing me all these old volumes that he has. It's good stuff. So you mentioned this before we got on, but where did the fascination with the paperbacks and the collecting start for you?
Yeah, so it started because I was into UFOs and the paranormal stuff as a kid in the 90s, where it was like the X-Files. It was that show Sightings on the Sci-Fi channel, and that kind of went fallow, but then later, as an adult, I started collecting these. I started with the UFO books, and then it just brought it out because, of course, that's just how the subject goes. It just, it's all encompassing. So I started collecting. They are still, many of them are still very inexpensive. You get specific titles and volumes that are, go for a lot, but most of the cheap old paperbacks are still really affordable, especially if you find them in used bookstores. And so I just started I'm holding one up to the screen right now for AP of just, the artwork. It's a weird three-eyed freakazoid creature for the Paperback Library, which was a cheapy publisher. It's called The Authentic Shudder, Researched and True Astounding Tales of Haunted Houses and Their Spectacular Specters by Warren Armstrong. And it is just, there's typical with these, the paperback library, there's no table of contents, there's no index. It's just the foreword, which they often didn't even have that. And then chapter 1, chapter 2, all the way to the end. And each one is just a random chapter of a random, in this case, ghost story. And the sourcing is thin at best. And as AP mentioned, it's this, meatloaf. You just get a bunch of stories together, you just put them together, you push it out. And if you're somebody like Brad Steiger or his writing collaborator Warren Smith, and you write so many of these, you end up having to use pseudonyms so that you don't drown out the market. And then you end up writing as Christopher Dane and Eric Norman. And Robert E. Smith was one of Warren Smith's pseudonyms when he wrote about the psychic Doc Anderson, who was a real character who Warren Smith got a lot of content out of. And one thing, when I started collecting these, just a few years, just right, because Brad Steiger died in 2018, and it was sort of this odd, this somewhat melancholy synchronicity. It was around that time that I had started getting all these books, and I was realizing this Brad Steiger guy, he writes a lot of these, and it was all across the genre. It was the UFO books and the ghost books and the psychic books and the fortean collections of everything. And that's when it was a book by Warren Smith about the Hollow Earth I had read. And then I had read it. No, it was a book by Eric Norman, which I hadn't known at the time was a pseudonym that Smith and Steiger shared, that they both used. And then when I read a later book by Warren Smith, I said, this is the exact same book. Someone just rearranged the chapters. And that's when I learned about the fact that these were just pseudonyms for that Eric Norman was not a renowned expert in the paranormal, as he's blurbed on some of his volumes. He's either Warren Smith or Brad Steiger, depending on which volume. And so that really sent me on the network part of it, like the web of the interconnections, and of like comparing how these volumes were assembled. And these 60 cents, the Authentic Shudder cost in 1967, And so Steiger put out, back in the, like, his total bibliography is like over 100 books, but specifically back then he was still like 50, 60 some books he churned out, because he kept writing up until he died. So that really became my draw, was the web of references, and also how they were recycling stories, because that's the other thing we really have to like emphasize, is how these Steiger and Smith also would just, they'd take stuff from an older book they wrote, and they would pad out a new book they wrote. They would write one specific volume about one specific subject, and that allowed them to take all the chapters they had ever written about that subject before and put it into this new book and say, here's a new book.
Yeah.
And another, they also, because Steiger started out writing movie monster books for the monster kids in the 60s about, movie monsters, which is that's a whole other collector's thing that I'm not knowledgeable on, but it is a whole thing, like
famous monsters of filmland and stuff like that. I have some of that, but I'm not a huge collector of it, but I do have some.
So Steiger dipped into that at the beginning of his career. That's how he started. He also wrote a couple of biographies. He wrote a Valentino biography, and he wrote a Judy Garland biography. And then his first, and I'm just going to hold it up for AP again to the screen, his first, I think it's his first or second fortean volume, Ghosts, Ghouls, and Other Peculiar People. It's a very silly illustration of a little goblin guy wearing some kind of little mid-century cap. And it says, "Welcome, I'm your own personal nightmare. My name is Fred, and I will never leave you." And it's, if you're familiar with what the books looked like later, his other 60s, there was a really specific aesthetic to the fortean style of Charles Fort, and then the Frank Edwards and C.B. Colby and Harold Wilkins after that. This Steiger's first or second fortean book is not inhabiting. It is more of a curio, I think more for general audience to look at and go, oh, that's silly, I'll grab it. But the style that he settled into just right after that is of all of these very anonymously drawn, like little cameo little cameo pieces on the cover.
Yeah.
Like
It's
the
almost
cover
like
will,
comic book panels, you know?
yeah,
Right.
it'll say like the one I'm holding, Beyond Unseen Boundaries by Brad Steiger, and it'll say, she saw her daughter die 100 miles away, and it's a lady gasping as she psychically sees her daughter dying in a car crash. And then, there's four of them on the front, two of them on the back. They draw you in. And this one is also good because this particular volume, Beyond Unseen Boundaries, has two drawings on it that aren't in the book. The Hottentot's Mind Unlocks the Sea's Secrets, which is a very mid-century illustration
Mhm.
of an African gentleman. And then on the back it says the unbelievable ESP king of the racetrack, who could, bet on the ponies and always win.
Yeah.
And the Hottentot story is I don't recall reading that in any of these, but the ESP king of the racetrack shows up in a later volume. So I'm picturing this giant slush pile that they have of random individual chapters, of Smith and Steiger. Like they got this giant pile of chapters, and they just are like, well, okay, time to make a book. And they just, haul out 30 chapters. It's like anywhere from 20 to 30 chapters in one of these. And
Yeah.
then they tell the publisher, all right, make 6 illustrations for these chapters. And then somewhere around the way, they got a little mixed up, and a chapter fell out here or there, got shuffled around.
Yeah. They ran out of room in the book or something.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me, the illustrations kind of remind me of like the Robert Ripley's Believe It or Not kind of method of doing a cartoon with with the story just kind of written in,
Mm-hmm. And it's also because these books have no interior illustrations. These are cheap paperbacks. They have no drawings inside. They have no maps or graphs or anything. So yeah, these drawings on the cover, that's the only like visual zhuzh you can get to draw people in. Look at this baby with the giant hand here.
Yeah.
He's also not in the book. Born with the blood red hand of an assassin on the title Strange Powers of Prophecy. Yeah, they're so that's how I really got drawn into it, specifically with the two writers Steiger and Smith, who accounted for such a huge chunk of the field that they were writing in, to the point where they needed to start using pseudonyms.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of a real pulp era of paperback paranormal mania, I guess, of the era. It was like easy enough to crank these out as like curiosity purchases, like a cheap something that'll catch the eye and somebody will just grab it out of curiosity because it's not the kind of deep dive you would get with somebody like Keel or Ballet or something like that on a topic.
Right.
Yeah. Because I always thought of, I didn't know that much about Steiger, but I had a bunch of his books, and I always thought of him as eventually I thought of him as, oh, he's like a story collector. Like he's one of these guys that grabs up stories and can kind of put them together in a book, and doesn't let facts get in the way of a good story. Doesn't cite his sources usually, and but I mean, he's in a tradition of that already. By the time he was doing it, plenty of other people were, and you listed some of them. Frank Edwards was probably one of the original guys doing that kind of pulpy style of it, but I mean, you would know better than me, I guess.
No, Frank Edwards, yeah, I think because he ended his career with a couple of UFO specific volumes, but for most of his career, he was writing just straight up forteana collections of just everything in the kitchen sink.
The strangest of all, Stranger Than Science.
Yeah, Stranger Than This, Stranger Than That, and that title, the strange title, sort of became its own little subgenre of titling, because all of the Steiger and Smith books that they were writing in the mid '60s, Strange ESP, Strange Powers of Prophecy, Strange Powers of Healing, Strange Encounters with Ghosts. Strange. You put strange in the title, you're telling people what they're going to get. If you've read Frank Edwards, you read Stranger Than Science, how about Strange Encounters with Ghosts? So.
Well, I have to say, strange is a pretty great word. It really has a great ring to it.
I don't know if I would trust anyone who's too into that word,
Well, because then you had the CB Colby had like Strangely Enough. right?
Yes,
Yeah,
which
that,
which got a scholastic reprinting, I think, in either the late 50s or 1959. That might not have been the scholastic edition. There was a scholastic edition of his book, which just all of a sudden, if you go online, all kinds of people from who are kids in that era remember this book because it was in school. It
right.
had a scholastic book club edition, and
That's the edition I have is one of the Scholastic printings. Yeah,
yeah, mine is a popular library printing, so it's not. Yeah, it's an older one, and it's got the what I like to call the Chariot's facelift cover, where it's just bold text. There's no illustrations on this cover. Bold
yeah.
text.
I like that, but it feels like a ripoff because
Yeah.
the covers are most of the charm of some of these books.
And what you see after Chariots of the Gods gets published in America with that bold-faced cover, you see reprints of older UFO and ancient astronaut books, which originally had really gorgeous cover art. You see the reprints of them coming out with just the bold text cover, just the plain, bold text cover, which can be like arresting, but it is also like, hey, this original art is really gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would prefer the artwork. And I've mentioned this before. I think with like Fate magazine, the way they did their covers, like the 1950s covers are
Yes, the
wonderful.
gorgeous painted scenes and everything.
Yeah, they're
And
great. And then
they've
somewhere in the 60s, they switched to all text covers, and it
mhm,
stayed that way for a long time.
for a long time, and now I think they're back to illustrations, but yeah, there's just something about the really early ones
I
where
think
it's
like
so
1978 they brought the cover pictures back,
okay.
but then they started doing like a center staple in the binding,
Oh yeah,
which
yes,
irks
because you'll
me.
have you'll have all your magazines, and you can see the title and the date and everything and the edition,
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden it goes over to that, and it's just you're
with
lost.
the yeah, with the digest binding is much
Hmm.
better for me because you can read the spine like a book, but the center staple's no good.
No, here's R. DeWitt Miller was another guy, because here's two editions. I'm sorry for the folks at home, but for AP's sake, here's
Stranger
two
than life.
editions. Yeah,
Yeah.
Stranger Than Life. One of them being a very like Bradbury-esque for some reason. I want to say like something you would see on the cover of a Ray Bradbury. This weird line drawing of a strange face,
Yeah.
very abstract. And then the other cover from just a little later, and this bugs me, but this is an Ace book, and Ace didn't date their reprints for some reason. They only ever put in the original copyright. So this
Yeah.
looks like a late 60s or 70s book, but the copyright's only 1955. They don't tell you when it was actually reprinted. And this one has like a weird Jesus Janus double-faced thing going on with kind of a bearded man in space with his
Yeah.
face is yeah. That is the kind of cover art that is very, to me, that's the good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. The covers are always really good on those. I mean, I have tons of old paperbacks around here, and I feel like the cover is part of the charm, but also uh I feel weird saying it, but the smell of the books. I love that
Oh,
like pulpy paper
absolutely.
smell.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm just
I,
grabbing one right
I,
now. Yeah, it's got it. It's that musty. Yes.
I like riffling the pages and just fanning the smell into my face. I
I
can
really I really like the ads in the back when the books have back page ads. I really like the overheated copy used to sell um like this. Here's a collection from Fate magazine about some of their stuff, Fate Stranger Than Fiction, where
yep.
they made a little paperback release of some of their, what they said was some of their best. And in the back they have George Adamski. They have ads for George Adamski.
Hmm.
Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery, for its time in paperback, this amazing book rips the curtain of secrecy from the flying saucer phenomena. Like
Yeah.
you finish reading this book, and then you see in the back, and you're like, well, God, I got to see what that's about.
Right.
And that's also, I mean, Adamski, you know who Adamski is, but, also there's other books listed in the back where you're like, oh, here's Strange Superstitions and Magical Practices by William J. Fielding. If you're
Right.
reading and you want more titles, and that's what they're giving you because they they wanted you to buy them, obviously. But that to me, that's how I find a lot of the books that, especially if they have a title that won't come up right away with searching online. Because
Right.
here in Portland, we have a lot of really good used bookstores, including, of course, we have the giant Powell's, but we also have just lots of great neighborhood bookstores. We can just browse, and you'll find lots of decent stuff. But if you're online trolling, and you're searching for something, if it doesn't have UFO or flying saucer in the title, how do you do just a general search to get a lot of stuff? Here's the Throwbacks by Roger Karras, writing as Roger Serac, because he was
Yeah.
I think it was an ASPCA guy, Roger Karras. He was an animal rights and environmentalist guy. I think this was his only fiction novel, and it's about Bigfoot. It's a combination Gothic, like romance, horror book, Bigfoot book. It's really good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
And it's
you
also
wrote
not.
about this one on your blog, and that
Yes, I
really
posted
cracked
it.
me up that he just turned his last name backwards to
Yes.
anonymize himself.
Yeah, because his name is Roger Karras, Caras, and his pen name is Serac, Sraac.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like he wasn't even trying. He was just saying, put that aside. That's just the fiction book I wrote. Don't,
Right.
look at, here's my body of work about nonfiction, about environmental issues and animal rights. But the thing about this, the Throwbacks, like if I'm on eBay or Etsy, it's probably going to be difficult to come up with unless someone has made a very thorough posting about it, saying Bigfoot thriller, the Throwbacks, because there's a lot. And then in that case, they probably know what they've gotten. It's probably more expensive than a listing that doesn't have any of that information that I might not ever find, because just some warehouse just put up every single book they have, and it's just the title and the author, and that's it. But
That's really the tricky thing about finding weird books is you would almost rather have a seller that doesn't know what they have. But if they
yeah,
don't know what they have, they don't know how to sell it. So
yeah.
you really got to hunt, right?
So, and like there are shops there's a shop on Etsy I really like, and there's one on eBay I really like, and they know what they've got.
Right.
They're priced fairly, but it's also, that's, it's not, it's really exciting when you find something in the wild, and
Yeah.
you pick it up and it's 50 cents and you're like, holy, but I think the Throwbacks, I think I found this in an ad from another Tower, because it's a Belmont Tower book from the publisher Belmont Tower, who are a very good, very cheap publisher. I think I found the Throwbacks title in an ad from another Tower book I had read, and that's how I find a lot of the titles I wouldn't maybe be able to stumble on as easily online.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely done that through Fate because I mean, I have a pretty fantastic collection from the 50s into the 70s, like not complete, but from that range. And every once in a while, there'd be a full page ad for a book that I've sounded wild, and I go hunt for it,
And their book review columns too. I've read a
Yeah.
lot of their book review columns, and
yeah. There's one that's like my white whale that I hope to find someday, and it's Hands. Have you heard of this one?
no, Hands, just Hands.
It's called Hands, a phenomenal case study, or no, a case study of a phenomenal hypnotic subject.
No, who's the author? Is it anybody?
I think his name was Lee Gladden. It had two authors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about this woman channeling an entity from space that's essentially like a big hand that has hands at the end of all its fingers.
Okay.
So it's a hand made out of hands.
Have you? I think you've mentioned that before. Have you
I
ever?
probally I'll
Have you
take any
spoken of it?
excuse to bring this book up. Yes. So.
Yeah. Okay. Because they're
yeah.
yeah, the
Um,
Fate ads.
right. Yep. Another one I found was Kinsman of the Dragon. Have you ever heard of this one?
No. Who's that and what is it? What's it
That's
about?
Stanley Mullen was the author, and I think it might be his only book, and it didn't do well, like because it only had one printing. But it's got this really wild, extravagant cover by Hannes Bach, who did a lot of artwork and books back then. Do you have any Hans Bach?
I don't think so. I mean, I wouldn't recognize his style on sight. So
Yeah, he was an artist and a writer, so he would do both. But he had this really cool process of drawing and painting, and then applying glaze to the image, and then painting over it again, which gave it this weird kind of like 3-dimensional look. Yeah, yeah. So that the cover to this book is wild, and it's got this weird kind of like science fiction, sci-fi kind of forteana feel to it. But yeah, that one I tracked down and bought just because I saw an ad in Fate magazine. So it's fun stuff. You find the good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have a method when you go into a store where you suspect they don't know what they have?
Because sometimes, generally, like for example, Powell's has a whole paranormal section and they're priced accordingly because they do sort everything very well and they know what they got. But I went up to I was actually up near Chehalis the other weekend, and downtown Centralia. There's a very nice old bookstore there, and I'm blanking on the name of it. Otherwise, I would give it a shout out. But they are the type where the shelves are just to the ceiling, and they had a fantastic selection. But it was almost all literally just alphabetical by author. All of the fiction and some of the nonfiction was just mixed in alphabetical by author. So I found some really good stuff, but it was just, you had to scan every shelf. And I mean, it's pretty easy. You look for the vintage text, you look for the old style, printing. Sometimes, I'll check out and see if if there's a sci-fi section, I'll look and see, do they have forteana or UFO stuff mixed in there?
Yeah.
Very rarely, like they'll be in the science section, they might have some UFO books if they do it that way. I did find a jackpot of Lobsang Rampa books down at Wallace Books in Selwood in Portland, which is a very good bookstore. They just had a stack of the fake monk Lobsang Rampa. In there, it's really vague genre sorting. Or in this one corner, they had, they happen to, if they have any, they'll put them over there, and they do have a bunch of like big, large format UFO, but the type of stuff that got printed in the 90s and 2000s, the large format UFO books, encyclopedia type stuff. But yeah, that's. I mean, what are your secrets of finding the fortean stuff?
I'm glad you mentioned the sci-fi section, because that's one thing I recommend to people is if you walk in and you can't find a UFO or New Age or weird or paranormal section, like sometimes if booksellers don't know, and like a lot of UFO book titles sound like it could be sci-fi, so they just throw it in the sci-fi section. So if you know what things to look for, sometimes just scanning through sci-fi pays off, because booksellers don't necessarily know what they're looking at when they have one sometimes.
and the genres kind of, it is kind of a blending and a vague, like you do, like I'm holding one right now from Otto Binder under his Eando Binder pseudonym, Menace of the Saucers, and it's a fiction piece, but he wrote a lot of non-fiction, quote unquote, UFO books, including a very good UFO reader from the end of the 60s, which was straightforward UFO history, and very measured in, like, saying here's what someone says, here's his reasonable stuff. And then the next year he wrote an Ancient Astronauts cash-in book, which just was like, totally just, well, I think Von Däniken, he's a genius, and let's investigate. Let's just bring in all the goofy Ancient Astronaut stuff and put this in a volume, and we can then, you're playing both sides. You put out a very reasonable, very thoughtful UFO book, and then just in case that doesn't get enough people, you go and you put out the really wild, crazy stuff that some people do really want.
Yeah.
And he also,
he was He was an interesting guy, though. But I think the
Yeah.
Otto Binder ones were the ones he co-wrote with his brother, right?
I read that was their. I'm not sure if later on if he and his brother were still writing together, but
Okay.
in the pulp era, yeah, they combined their. His name what was his name? Was the name Ed or something like because it was E
Eric.
and Eric. Okay, E and O, Eric and
Right.
Otto Binder together make Yando.
Yeah.
Um, because the Menace of the Saucers and the Night of the Saucers are both from the '60s. I don't know. And then he died fairly not too long. I think he died in the '70s. Otto
Yeah.
Binder,
Mhm.
and his daughter died tragically before him, and that was right when he was writing his 2 UFO volumes, one of which is dedicated to his daughter that passed away.
Yeah. And he was a great cartoonist too. I mean,
Yeah,
he
he
did a lot
major
of like
comics
UFO
figure.
strips. Yeah.
Yeah, which again is not an area I'm as familiar with, but you go on Wikipedia and that's his main. That's what he's mostly known for is he co-inventing or inventing just a ton of classic comics characters who
Yeah.
uh, to this
But
day
he
are
would,
still.
yeah, he would do like UFO encounters like in comic book style too.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, there's some really good ones. There really ought to be a collection of those printed
There
in a
should.
volume. That would be great.
There should. I because again, yeah, I collect the paperbacks. I have a very, very, very small handful of magazines and comic books, including. Let's see, where is it? Oh yeah, just gonna hold it up. Alien UFO and Alien Comics, which was a Warren magazine publication, which reprinted this one. You see this one a lot online. It's on the archive too, if people want to check it out. And that's the thing. A lot of the UFO comics are on archive.org. As
Yeah,
are a
I've
lot of the
noticed that a lot
paperbacks.
of your blog posts have the link for the archive.org in case you want to like read the whole book, which is super
Yeah,
cool.
and
Yeah.
I very specifically um there's a couple of them like this Sasquatch horror fiction Sasquatch book by Emmy Nair,
Hmm.
which for some reason, it's a good book. I read it. It's a decent thriller. It's from 1977. This is the British New English Library edition from '78. Um, it goes for ridiculous prices online for some reason, like
Hmm.
hundreds of dollars, just totally ridiculous. And so I got my hands on a copy, and I personally scanned the whole goddamn thing just to put it out there, just so that if you really want to read this old thriller about Bigfoot, you can for free without having to, some
Yeah.
scalper give some scalper $100 to send you this book that originally went for in England 75 pence, in the
Yeah.
UK 75 pence. Uh, Recommended price in Australia $2.50 Australian cents. Yeah, and I've done that with a couple. There's been How to Become a Sensuous Witch. That was one I threw online because that one is a very um the cover to that one is just so gonzo and so deliberately, it's provocative, it's exciting,
Yeah.
it was made to sell. Um, and I just didn't. I got sick of looking at all the listings online being so okay. I don't have it in front of me, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Being so overpriced, and so I said, screw it. And I happened to actually land on a cheap listing that just came up, and I just grabbed that right away, and I just scanned the whole thing and just threw it up on the archive.
There
And I
you
also
go.
did that for I think it was uh, Ancient Astrological Secrets of the Jews or some title like that, which was another one because of the Gonzo title and the Gonzo cover art, which I believe it's just a menorah with some like zodiacal imagery.
Hmm.
You see that the witch books. AP, have you noticed this with witch books? They go for insane prices.
Yeah, because they kind of have this like kitsch value to them, or it's like popular sensational witchcraft for the
Mm-hmm.
masses. Um, and I have a bunch of them, and
Oh, jealous.
I'm glad that you've covered so many on your blog because I'm like these are really fascinating little things like witchcraft in the USA. I think is one of
Yes.
them. Yeah. Um, One that I like is I'm going to blank on the title now, but it was a Scott Cunningham one that there was a printing in the 80s, and it looks like such a generic book because it's just this
Oh.
average this average woman on the cover. It looks like came from the cover of like a Red book or something.
Oh, that's great.
Because the whole idea is that like witches are just normal people too.
Yeah, they're
Like,
just normal people, which, yeah, Witches USA, Witchcraft in America Today, a couple of these
yeah,
70s volumes, that was their whole shtick, was we're going to interview some real witches and show you they're just normal suburban people, or exciting, sexy city people, too.
yeah, yeah, and like they don't go hexing people, but you know, bad stuff tends to happen to people that cast witches.
That was Witches USA, yeah, the author, which to me is like, oh, come on, you know. So are you really not responsible for that then? You know,
Right. No, it's karma. Karma took care of it.
right.
Okay, well, I got to ask you because we kind of blew right past this. What are your
Okay.
thoughts on T. Lobsang Rampa?
Oh yeah, Mr. Cyril Hoskin or
Yeah,
Cyril Hoskins. Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
for
he is a
listeners that maybe don't know.
yeah, so he's this guy, yeah, the basic stuff. He's this guy, he's British. In the 50s, he published an autobiography called The Third Eye, about being a Tibetan monk and about undergoing a literal operation to open up his third eye, which was like the culmination of his training as a monk to, like, become wise and understand the universe. And it came out almost immediately that this monk was, again, he was a British guy named Cyril Hoskin, who had never been to Tibet, was not a monk, was not Tibetan, had just completely made up this story. And the actual, like, Tibetan content in it is interesting because people say, like, people when I see people who are like Tibetologists or Buddhist in the, in the Tibetan tradition, they say he's got something where he knew some of it, like he had exposure to some part of it to write some sort of, like, authentic, but where he goes with it is just completely, astral projection, yetis, flying
Mm.
saucers, third eye. And then,
Telepathic contact with his cat.
yes, oh
Yep.
yes, and then he wrote a story, Living with the Llama, which he didn't write it, his cat wrote it, he translated it from the Siamese cat language, he said.
Right. Right.
And
That's what it was.
it's
Yeah.
about living with him. It's about this cat who thinks he's just so wonderful and wise. And that, to me, that's the real thing about Rampa. The thing that, like, you cannot read his books without pegging him as this mid-century British twat. You know, the way he is so miserable. He is so miserable. He is so, when he attempts to write uplifting stuff like the cat, it's so treacly, it's so, like, insincere. It feels like he's writing beneath him, like he's thinking, these idiots are gonna eat this up. They're gonna love this.
Right.
That's my impression of him. And the things he complained, his books. You open up a book and it'll have like a title like, the 13th Candle, and you'll think, okay, I'm gonna get, maybe I'll learn something. Maybe I'll. And it's just him bitching about the unions, the post office, the foreigners, the feminists, anyone who pissed him off that day. He's gonna write in how there's one story he tells about a Welsh guy who is so mad at the English, which is so unfair because the English have never done anything to anyone. The British, however you chop up
Right.
the UK to, so the Welsh, there's a Welsh guy who's really mad at the British. And how unfair, and Rampa's POV is, this guy's just complaining, he's a whinger. And then he gets a job as a bus driver for British tourists, and he develops hemorrhoids from sitting down on the bus all day. Or he develops constipation, actually, is what it is. And then this was part of Rampa's medical stuff, because a
Mm.
lot of his books would have like a little medical thing about how to treat, folk remedies and what his idea about sickness was. And it just, the fact that you go into the chapter saying he's going to teach you about medicine, and then you sit through this long story about this horrible, stupid Welshman, and all the, what a loser he is, and oh my god. And then he gets constipation from sitting on the bus driving the tourists around, and it's like, that is like a good chunk of most of his books is some long. He also thinks he loves to make up silly names for people, like
Mhm.
like, you know, Miss Eugenia, you know, Giant Bottom or something would be a name he would make up for a housewife, you know, something like that. And he's just a really nasty guy for somebody who's talking about like the wonders of the universe and enlightenment, and you know, he's just very I don't know. It to me it does peg him just right away, just as this English guy, as just this, you know, this small-minded provincial mid-century Englishman who has his, you know, biases, as we all do, you know, and has his
Right.
background, and is really pissed off about it though, and is really going to want to tell you about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting character. I mean, he had quite a few books and I think even a record out, right?
Yeah, he's got it's on YouTube about it's about meditation, and it's also, you listen to it and he's so full of crap. He's really good at like the patter, because he talks about you have to light some incense, and he goes, but not that skinny, you know, measly, get a good thick stick of incense. Like, oh, he knows what he's talking about, you know. Yeah, okay, yeah, he's gonna lead me on my meditation, absolutely. And I wish I could remember the author right now, but there is one of the, because again, when I'm looking him up, there's someone who has a Buddhist site who came into possession of some of his Lobsang Rampa's photographs, like personal photographs from his estate after he passed away. And he wrote a very interesting article about it, where he said, you know, this guy did travel the world, and the things he took pictures of, it was very interesting. His focus was infrastructure, vehicles, ships, you know, buildings. He never visited a Buddhist center, you know, he didn't take spiritual photos. He
Hmm.
took, and if you read his books, he is very into scene setting, because he moved around a little bit he ended up in a couple of places in Canada, because he said he had to flee the press persecution in England, because everyone was pointing out that he was a lying fraud, you know,
Right.
that's the other thing. He's always on about the press, you know, and the communists.
Oh. Fake
So
news.
this Buddhist writer online said, which was really interesting to me. Yeah, he had this real interest in technology and infrastructure, and like how things work, because a lot of his scene setting in his stories is about, you know, he's living in a port city. So he'll write about, you know, the ships coming in, and the weather and the fog and the voices on the, you know, on the fog, and he'll write about the building that he's in, and it's interesting. It almost feels like here's a guy who kind of got trapped. Not that I have much sympathy for him, but he kind of got trapped in his persona, you know, of having to write as this monk. When you read his stuff, it kind of becomes apparent that that was not necessarily what he wanted to write per se, you know, or where he really would have written had he been free of that persona.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty interesting stuff. I can't say that I've read enough of his stuff. I do want to read the cat story. I have it, so I haven't got to it yet. But
It's oh man, if you can handle bad mid-century British children's writing, you can handle it.
all right, yeah. I mean, I'm all about bad writing. I mean, bad writing can be super entertaining. I
Yeah.
gotta say, as I'm sure you're well aware, because
Yes.
you don't really pull any punches when you're writing reviews for these books.
I
You
mean,
say
I
exactly what it
do
is. Yeah.
I do, especially like I really liked the throwbacks, which I recently read, and I recently also read the Sasquatch by Emmy Nair, which I also liked. I would rate them about. I use a 4-star rating for the fiction. I rate them both 3 stars. There's something really nice about a vintage thriller. Like the throwbacks is only 140 pages long. You know,
Hmm.
there is no fat on it at all. It just, you know, it does exactly what the writer wants it to do. It delivers, and to me, you know, I don't read a lot of modern like novel, like genre novel thriller stuff, because it's all 400 pages long, and to me it's bloated. Like that's just my personal preference. I like these lean old thrillers, or if I read something thick from back in the day, I'm my understanding will be that it'll be worth the time. You know, it'll be like a
Right.
really dense, involved thing. It won't just happen to be 500 pages long, because that's what all books have to be now.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, speaking of Sasquatch, one of my favorite covers that I've ever seen, just because it's absurd, you've covered on your blog. I think it's like The Secret of Bigfoot, is it? Yeah, they're
The
the
Secret
secret
Origins
origins of
of Bigfoot
Bigfoot.
by Warren Smith, by our man Warren Smith. One of my favorite. I think his favorite books of mine I prefer above my favorite books of Steiger. Yeah, The Secret Origins of Bigfoot,
And we'll
which is one
definitely
of
have to
his.
share this cover on Instagram or something, because
Yes,
I think you
it's
described it as looking like a seal pup's head hastily applied to like some buff dude's body.
yeah, it's a buff hairy guy filmed like from above him, like you're looking down on him. You can like see his hair, and then they pasted a seal's head above it, like a really weird way to try to make a Bigfoot, and it's
It's the
really
most
weird. It's
awkward
weird.
looking Bigfoot. Yeah.
It doesn't, yeah, and it's another Zebra special from Warren Smith that he wrote in the mid-70s for Zebra Books, the really cheap publisher. And this is probably the silliest cover because he wrote some pyramid books, an Atlantis book, this and that, and they mostly were just here's a model pyramid with weird lighting. It looks cool, it grabs your interest. But this, yeah, God, this is definitely the and this book, the actual contents of it were pretty much just a reprisal of a previous, because he wrote I think he wrote Strange Abominable Snowmen, I think, and then Brad Steiger wrote Abominable Snowmen roughly around the same time, and they were just the same forteana style, focused on Bigfoot, of random
Right.
chapters, one chapter at a time, just an anecdote about the subject. And so a few years later, Smith took what he had written in Strange Abominable Snowmen, and I actually think this book holds together better, Secret Origins of Bigfoot. He made more of a structure to it, which I actually think works really well. And then he put it out, because all of his Zebra books, they all have titles like that: The Secret Origins of Bigfoot, Strange Powers of the Pyramids, Secret Forces of the Pyramids, sorry, Strange Secrets of the Loch Ness Monster. And those were all recycled, almost completely recycled from his earlier writing.
And
Which
he eventually threw in the towel, huh? He stopped writing about Forteana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of his final ones was UFO Trek, which Zebra Books actually then, a couple years later, they republished it with a new title, The Book of Encounters.
Yeah.
Presumably, maybe it didn't sell as well as they wanted. They give it a cool some holographic effect there.
Cool.
Hold it up for the benefit of our host. And then I think his very last one was Ancient Mysteries of the Mexican and Mayan Pyramids. But what I think happened, this is something which I find interesting. In UFO Trek, he has one chapter about Heaven's Gate, which at that time, there's Bo and Peep, T and Doe, all the pseudonyms that Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles were going by. And he writes very critically of them, very much. And he even quotes a different UFO cultist who says, "These guys are bad news. I don't like what they're about. Somebody's going to get hurt." And he ends like he says, "This is not, this is bad news. What's this all about?" Steiger wrote a promotional volume for them around the same time called UFO Missionaries Extraordinary, which has a little bit of like, oh, gee, maybe it's dangerous, but it's pretty much, you're promoting it. You're putting it all out there. You're putting the writing of Marshall Applewhite out there. You're spreading it. And he did that a lot. Steiger did that for so many different frauds and grifters, and he did that for the Huna Magic people, the Howleys in Hawaii, who claim to have discovered the authentic indigenous Hawaiian magic, but it was actually just made up by white people. It wasn't actually indigenous culture at all. But he wrote a volume.
He kind of recycled that into books a bunch of times.
Yeah. Then he
kept coming back to that. Yeah.
He recycled that into his Jadoo ripoff, his ripoff of John Keel's Jadoo, which was something about the Orient, strange powers of the Orient or something like that, which was again just chapter after chapter of here's a random anecdote tangentially connected to quote unquote the Orient, including Komar, the Hindu faker, who's actually a guy from like the Midwest, a white guy from the Midwest who did an act where he dressed up as a Hindu guy and did like feats of strength. So it's kind of weird that got into a book about Asia.
Yeah.
But Steiger was just going through his drawers and just saying, okay, well, here, I'll throw this Komar chapter in, because he wrote a whole book about Komar. And yeah, he took chapters from the Huna magic book and he threw those in there too. Yeah, as you said. But what I
Right.
think going
Well,
to
didn't he even include the Huna stuff in the Native American magic book that he
oh,
wrote?
okay, yes, oh yeah, because he wrote the American Indian and the Occult.
Right.
And he wrote a ton of American Indian stuff after, but I think this might be, as Christopher Dane, this might be the earliest one he did, and it looks legit. You know, like I'm gonna hold it. It
Right.
looks like it should be a decent reference volume. And if you don't know who Christopher Dane is, but then you read it, and it is, again, it's the same fortean chapter after chapter, and it's just, some of it is just complete nonsense. Some of it's obviously nonsense. Some of it's just, here's an unsourced anecdote.
Mm-hmm.
And very little of it has to do with the actual nominal like title and subject matter of actually relating the occult, what we understand as the occult, to any kind of indigenous, tradition or people. It's, yeah, I think the Huna. Oh, and what I also love, I'm flipping through it when you see the cigarette ads and
Oh yeah,
what
yeah.
Kent has the micronite filter. This is after they took the asbestos out, because in the
Yeah.
50s they had the asbestos filter and they eventually changed it out for cellulose. So instead of actively giving you more cancer, it just wouldn't stop the cancer you're already getting.
Right, right.
Yeah, the Huna magic stuff, he was stuck on that. He was really stuck. He wrote a lot of later Native American stuff, which I haven't read. And that's the thing too, where him and Smith kind of cleave. Smith, like you said, he throws in the towel. Um, and he, in the 80s, Warren Smith, he writes some westerns, he writes some family epics like the John Jake style of, American families going through history. And then he retires from writing at the end of the 80s and he passes away in the early 2000s. Steiger keeps writing new age stuff almost up until the day he dies in 2018. Like some of his last, I think, are like 2015 or something. And he keeps recycling his old stuff. He starts writing like encyclopedia type volumes where he can just
Mm-hmm.
literally just take all his old stories and just dump them in. And he gets on the Starseed train in the late 70s, which to me seems to be the real pivot point between him and Warren Smith, because
Yeah.
Steiger pretty much invented the whole Starseed concept, at least under that name, and then that would permutate into indigo children and
Mm-hmm.
all of the new age alien stuff. And it seemed to me kind of like Smith is writing this stuff very mercenary, just as just a means to an end, and perhaps doesn't want to actually buy into this new age stuff or become like a guru,
Mm-hmm.
where Steiger is writing it, and he writes
Yeah, he's fine with it.
he's fine with it. He writes Revelation, the Divine Fire in the 70s,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
about what he sees as, part of it is about what he sees as, this is pretty like general, like you see this with Jacques Vallée and you see this with a lot of people theorizing what is the commonality between what we consider all kinds of experiences, UFO and religious and
Mm-hmm.
paranormal. What is the commonality there? And he focuses on Revelation in this text as a sort of religious experience. And
Now, did he claim to be a starseed himself, or was that his wife?
his wife, I know his wife, his second wife, there's a whole thing about him untangling his marriages. He either was married 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Someone has done good work on this online. I just haven't read it. His wife, yeah, his wife was a star seed. He, in an interview with Timothy Green Beckley in the 80s, he talks about he had an early near-death experience as a child, and he also saw an elf as a child. So
Mm-hmm.
that for him, that was his, what drew him into that subject matter. And I think when you even look at his name, changing his name from Eugene Olson to Brad Steiger, that there is, to me, there's this search for identity through his whole career, which culminates in that. Whereas when Warren Smith uses a pseudonym, it's just because that's what you need to do in the business sometimes. Like Warren Smith's
Yeah.
name was Warren Smith. Sometimes he had to use a pseudonym. Brad Steiger's name was Brad Steiger after he changed it from Eugene Olson.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's it's super interesting. I mean, it kind of makes you think differently about a lot of these books because like I said, I always grew up with Steiger just being another name on the shelf along next to Keel and Hynek and all the other authors I had there, but it's kind of funny, and I think you had mentioned earlier he chose the name Steiger because of the actor Rod Steiger.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
said his favorite actor was Rod Steiger, so that influenced his choice.
Huh.
And I think
It,
he also, I think he said Brad was just a strong name to use.
yeah, it's a good guy name,
Yeah,
I always thought it was kind of an odd name though, like Brad Steiger.
it
It's
always
just
twigged. You always twigged it somehow.
yeah. I mean, just Brad. The Brad part stuck
Oh,
out to me for whatever reason. Seemed like an odd name for that time period, but maybe
right,
not.
right. How many parents
Yeah,
were naming their kids Brad back then?
maybe they were. Well, I
Maybe they
guess I
were.
don't know. But yeah, I mean, and it's funny because he seemed to be pretty good friends with Timothy Green Beckley. I found an old issue from the 80s of one of Beckley's magazines, and it just almost seems to be a Steiger advertisement all the way through. Like every page has like articles by Brad Steiger or ads for things that he was doing.
Yeah, this interview was it was a long interview. Like, it started, it was two or three pages, and then it says, go to page 80 or whatever. And then it like the back end of the magazine was most of it. It was a like 10-page interview that he had done. It was I posted it to my blog too and to the archive. So
Yeah.
it talks about his early life experiences, and then it gets into his whole Steiger he kind of had the ultra terrestrial thing going on, the trickster thing going on, as sort of his way of theorizing about different phenomena and putting them together. And I can't recall if he actually goes into starseed stuff in this specific interview, but that is where he was at the time, was this big time paranormal theorist kind of putting it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. And then later on, he wrote about like psychic animals too.
Yeah, yeah. Is it Cat's Incredible or Cat's Amazing or something? Where
Yeah, something like that. That
yeah,
was one of the ones he co-wrote with his wife at the time. So
yeah.
yeah. And I had
Oh,
mentioned earlier I found a copy of that and I ended up sending it to Stephanie Quick, so it found a good home with her.
found a good place. Yeah, good hands.
But I
Um,
think it was because some of those stories appeared in a different book that he wrote. Um, and I was like, I think I already have this one.
uh-huh.
That's it, it's
I have
funny because
50% of this.
yeah, well, you end up thinking like you're going crazy or you have double copies of stuff, but it's really just you've read that same story by the same writer in a different
Hmm.
volume. Yeah.
Oh my God, my favorite thing that Warren Smith did for his zebra books, for the myth and mystery of Atlantis. He has a chapter in here about Hitler and Atlantis, and I was reading like this seems pretty familiar. It's his Hollow Earth book has a chapter, Hitler on the Hollow Earth, and it's literally the same chapter but with Atlantis replacing Hollow Earth, literally going through the text and just find and replace Hollow Earth with Atlantis. It's got the same
That's
like Buer Lytton, the Vril, and all that as the background. And then it
yeah,
goes in, but it just says instead of being obsessed with the Hollow Earth, Hitler was obsessed with Atlantis, and yeah,
yeah.
that's the chapter.
Which is mostly pulled from Morning and the Magicians anyway, right?
Yeah, not yeah,
Yeah.
not don't be relying on Warren Smith for your World War II historical.
Yeah. Wow, that's funny. Okay, well, what do you have like a weirdest book? Is there something that you found that just really boggled your mind or stood out as spectacularly
Yeah,
weird
yeah. There's a couple.
or
There's
strange, I should say, I guess,
the
because
very
strange.
strange. Yeah, let me get the strangest book I can for AP Strange. Well, this one's just fun. Cha Mank's Psychic Diary of the Stars, with an introduction by Brad Steiger, the celebrity psychic astrologer Cha Mank, and it's
Tom
just
Mank. Okay.
yeah, one of those mid-century characters,
I
and
gotta say, you stumped me. I've never heard of that guy
he's just
before.
I think if you look him up, he probably had a column that he did about
Right.
because it's all this is all focused on Jackie O, Frank Sinatra, Sharon Tate, Bill Cosby, the Beatles, Mia Farrow. Just that's another interesting. We could spend a fucking hour on celebrity psychic stuff from the mid-century about what all the psychics were saying about Jackie O. She's probably going to get married again. That's what my psychic sense tells me.
Right.
Weird, strangest books. The Pro-Phrenology book from the 70s.
Wow.
Phrenology, Secrets Revealed by Your Face and Head, by a guy named Devi Sanero, who also wrote a hypnosis book, but those are his only 2 credits for books. This, yeah, a Pro-Phrenology book from 1970. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was time for phrenology to make a comeback in 1970.
I'm sure we can make it come back again now in our day and age. Um,
That sounds like some real Maha reading material.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't let RFK Jr. see this, because his head, I'm sure, has some issues. Yeah, I'm just gonna hold up one of the many illustrations inside. Yeah, if you have a big dent in the middle of your head, that is a small veneration, and it's a problem.
Right.
The funny thing, about that pseudoscience, it wants to have its cake and eat it too when you read this specific text, because it says everybody knows phrenology has a bad reputation, but that's only because you expect it to be 100% accurate, and it doesn't say everything about your personality. It only says like 85% about your personality. Like they're
Right.
trying to make it sound more convincing just by hedging everything. And then it's like, okay, but what does it actually? Yeah, that's a good one. That one scanned and up on the archive. Got lots of illustrations about people's head bumps in there. Another one I really like is these are both Tower books from the Tower Belmont, the very good cheap publisher. And this one is called Who Me Fly? And it is a self-help promotional book for people to pilot light aircraft. Yes, you fly. Do it yourself flying is in. Here's what it takes to fly. And so this is targeting people, telling them flying is efficient. You can fly your whole family out hundreds of miles you can fly them out to Michigan and go fishing or whatever. Skip the car ride, skip the traffic. It's cheap, it's easy to learn. And my favorite thing is that the book even comes with promotional coupons. Get $5 off. Your Cessna dealer will put you in the controls of a Cessna 150. We'll take $5 off your first flying lesson with these coupons.
It comes with coupons. Yeah.
And just
they look like green stamps too.
Yeah. Light air, it's such a dangerous hobby to be doing a promotional volume for it. I mean, one of the
I wouldn't want to learn how to fly an aircraft through correspondence. I feel like you need somebody there for that.
No, it says you just gotta read this book, and it even says at the very end, like, this book won't teach you everything, but now that you've read it, you're ready to start. I mean, one of the nicknames for the Beechcraft Bonanza, isn't that one nicknamed like the dentist killer or something? Because so many, because the stereotype is that dentists, they get rich enough, they buy their own plane and then they crash and die in it.
Yeah.
On the forward is by Skitch Henderson, who is some mid-century guy. I looked him up. NBC television star, composer, conductor, and musician. And he is a big advocate of flying your own personal aircraft, flying your whole family all across the country. Another very interesting and very a lot of it's a book by a Holocaust denier, and as is so typical in this genre, it's somebody trying to avoid revealing that about themselves. It's the Lost Tribes from Outer Space, and the cover art. There's very nice cover art for this British edition from Corgi. Is an old biblical-looking, like Moses-looking guy in a spacesuit with a Star of David on his spacesuit. So obviously the Jews are from outer space. That's where it's by a guy named Mark Dem, which was a pseudonym, pen name for a French Holocaust denier. Straight up, that's what he was. And he says he has a prefatory note. It is not my intention to give anti-Semitism any support whatsoever. Anyone who reads this book will, I believe, be entirely convinced of that. Yeah. The book's thesis is that Jewish people were invented by the evil alien computer god Yahweh to destroy the
Mm-hmm.
earth. And Jesus was a rebel alien who sacrificed himself to stop that from happening. So that's, but there's nothing untoward about, there's no,
Right.
what
So
to me,
basically, he has a note, an author's note that says, "I'm not racist, but."
yeah, literally, yes, that's, and, this was published in America too. This was published by Quirky, published by some, like, major publisher in America, sitting on the shelf next to all the other ancient astronaut books, which are all, not all, but varying degrees of racist and bizarre and pseudoscientific. But to me, that book sticks out for how blatant it is, and how it really kind of like tightens up your view. And then you see Von Daniken. You see, because I mean, there's Jason Colavito has a nice article on his website about the astonishing racial claims of Eric Von Daniken from one of his lesser 80s sequels he wrote, that where he writes about, did the aliens engineer black people to be good at basketball? I'm just
Right.
asking questions. And I mean, obviously you step foot into this scene and you just start tripping over this stuff. So that sticks out to me as like a very, like, kind of, what's the word for it, where it just kind of sums up a large part of something, just the existence of the lost tribes from outer space.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good well, now I can't think of a word for it. I feel like I had one. It's an avatar for that kind of
Yes, it's an it's an
that'll work.
avatar for the whole. And I got just a few more crazy books I got.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say I appreciate that in your reviews that you don't shy away from pointing things like that out, because I feel like in this era that you're covering, especially, but even more recently, up through like the 90s and early 2000s, it was just kind of like bad etiquette to point out that people are saying some fucked up stuff. And so, like, within forteana, it's like, hey, look, we all have fringe beliefs here, so it's kind of rude to say that guy's crazy beliefs are
just because he's
a problem.
hiling. Yeah. Well, no,
like we really should consider this. Like, maybe Jews did come from space to destroy the world.
God, the Ernst Zundel, the Holocaust denier, because he would put ads out in Fate for his Hitler UFO books, and he literally explained he did it, one, to raise money to write more books about how the Holocaust didn't happen and how Hitler was wonderful. Literally, one of his book titles is like "The Hitler We Knew and Loved." He also said, it was a good way to get people's eyeballs on his stuff. And he said, you start off with the really crazy alien Hitler stuff, and then you start drip feeding, well, what else is pretty crazy, and then the Holocaust denial, you go right into that and you get people kind of enmeshed in that. And you do it with the wacky. I mean, I think of it, the way Alex Jones.
It seems more down to earth, because you are talking about historical events, as opposed to the way out there, outer space stuff, while at the same time you're leading people down this trail of like bigotry and like race science, or like whatever it may be. It's just
and you've already got them in the headspace of accepting wild stuff, where if Hitler has a saucer base in Antarctica, then it's not that much further to go to the atrocity denial.
Right. Yeah, and it's horrible, but this stuff is completely interwoven in all of the weird, and you can't just yank it out. You just got to point out where it is, so that people are aware of it. It's like putting little flags on landmines, like
or little dog turds on the yard, and the little flags on the dog turd.
Exactly. Yeah. So I appreciate that you do that, because sometimes people just don't even want to touch it, so they just don't bother,
Oh, and I think sometimes too, like, again, like, it's bad etiquette, or it's just wacky. Like, Alex Jones, in my opinion, he does a lot of the same thing, where he tries to, the whole gay frogs thing, that was a meme. he was taking a real issue of industrial pollution, of pesticide pollution, and he was twisting it into the Jewish communists want to make you gay. You know,
Right.
he was diverting from a real issue, which is his job, and he was directing towards this nonsensical, but very serious kind of thing, and doing it in
Mhm.
a way which sounds ridiculous. Like, oh, it's funny, gay frogs, haha. You know, it's ridiculous,
Yeah.
but it's it's a funnel. So
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
let's see. Sex and Satanism by Brad Steiger, another good one.
Yeah. Classic.
Classic. Classic. Well loved. You keep it on your bedside table. 1969.
What year was that? Like 1972?
1969.
69. Wow. All right.
Nice. Yeah.
Because
Rosemary's Baby.
I feel like there were a bunch of horror movies that came out around that time of like satanic sex cults.
Yes.
And they all feel like the same movie to me, so I can never remember which one's which. Like Blood on Satan's Claw and like
Well, The Devil's Reign has Ernest Borgnine. That's how I remember that one.
yeah, that was a little later. That was I think
yeah.
mid-70s.
Mid
Yeah.
70s, yeah.
But yeah, like late 60s into the early 70s had a bunch that were like I think Nude for Satan was one of them.
Had a few British ones which I can't keep. Like you mentioned, Blood on Satan's Claw. There's a few other British ones I can't keep apart in my head that are all.
I can't either.
Yeah.
They're all just blended into one movie. But yeah, I figured it had to be from that time period.
Yeah. And then, of course, Steiger and Smith also wrote. Actually, I think these are both Smith. Wrote some sexy erotica, Martinis, Manhattans, or Me.
There you go.
By Barbara O'Brien, with a very attractive 70s brunette lady on the cover in a bar.
Wait,
this is basically
Barbara O'Brien.
Yeah, the name of the woman who wrote Operators and Things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a weird. Someone online has pointed that out as a synchronicity, and I think it truly is just a total
Weird coincidence.
Yeah. But given Warren Smith's normal subject matter at the time, it does give you pause. And this is a ripoff of Coffee, Tea, or Me, the supposed stewardess tell-all written by a man in the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
like in the whole happy hooker genre. But it's Warren Smith writing erotica about, there are penises spurting and, there's fingers going places, and doing it as like a tell-all of, I'm a sexy bartender lady, and here's the life I live, and here's all the, here's what happens. And in the back, there's ads for a ton of sex, sociology, and marriage books everyone is buying. The group sex scene, Purr, Baby, Purr, The Woman Lover, How to Make It 365 Days a Year, Sheesh. Sexual Cybernetics,
Ooh, I need that one.
You need that one, by Dr. Paul Gillette, Trailblazing System for the Individual Who Wants to Control His Sexual Responses. Written for the layman by an eminent psychologist and sexologist. The Joy of Hooking, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then he also wrote as Paul Warren, The Sensual Male. Oh, yeah. That's literally, How to Make It 365 Days a Year. So I also
How to quote, make it.
Make it. And this one's funny. This one's not as, the Martinis and Manhattan and Me is like at least written as kind of porny, like, there's sex in it and stuff. This one's more like, hey, bro, a Volva's not a type of foreign car, dude. You got to get with it. You got to understand. Kids, come on, dude. You got to learn. Yeah. And also this one has, cigarette ads in the middle. So, yeah, which is apropos for a sex book, You got to do something afterwards.
Absolutely.
One of my favorites that I just totally stumbled upon by Warren Smith and Eugene Olson. This is one of Steiger's earliest books. He did not have his pen name yet. The Menace of Pep Pills, which is a quick little, like, scaremongering book with a quote by Senator Thomas Dodd on it about the pep pill problem.
Don't do speed, kids.
Yep, don't do speed. About truckers doing speed, about kids doing speed. Interesting. Dr. Jolly West has a little slug quote here. because of course he's very, he's a big name. If you ever, yeah, here we go. People who describe the drug users as thrill seekers are wrong. It's not as simple as that. ... And that's his entire contribution to the book. But he's just one of many authorities quoted here as having something to say about the issue. And then from Zebra, we have The Strange World of Brad Steiger, which is this beautiful bold-faced holographic foil. Just random collection of random Brad Steiger, which I'm sure Huna Magic's in here. My copy is unfortunately falling apart. Zebra Books, not the, again, a cheap publisher. And then just a couple more here. We have, Satan's Assassins by Brad Steiger and Warren Smith. Now, Steiger's writing as Steiger at this point. I think this is, again, just like Sex and Satanism. This has got to be, this is 1971. It's Doc Anderson gets in here because he fought a demon. Yeah, Charles Manson, Lee Harvey Oswald, Sirhan. What infamous occult doctrine did Leon Trotsky's killer study in his cell? Tying in every single, Lee Harvey Oswald. Who were the devil men he spoke of before his death? And then Doc Anderson was a guy Warren Smith just loved to use for content. He was one of those mid-century psychic stars who, again, talking about World War II, in one of in Warren Smith's Pyramids book, he tells a story about Doc Anderson being in Manchuria in World War II, which of course he never was. Never went there. But according to Doc Anderson, him and a buddy were there, and they met a warlord, and they found some secret pyramid and some secret tunnels, and this, that, and the other. But Doc Anderson is probably most infamous now for dying in a flash flood, and then having wags write in his obituaries that he should have seen it coming.
Oh yeah, yep. There you go. I was going to ask, with the Manchuria connection, did they try to draw a connection to like MK Ultra? The Manchurian Candidate idea.
It was the connection was because there were some Chinese burial mounds that were described as mystic pyramids. Because actually, a pilot in World War II flying over the Himalayas into southern China did see these burial mounds, which are pyramid. They flat topped, but they're pyramid shaped, and he saw them, and he described like this. It was 500 feet tall and it was gleaming white, and then they find it and it's only 150 feet tall, and it's a but still these impressive
still
structures.
Pretty tall. Yeah.
Still these impressive structures. But he was connecting it to that, and also to the idea that in Asia there's all these tunnels that go to like Agartha and the Hollow Earth and Shangri-La. That's what the connection was there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice tunnels where you can go down and kill some Darrows.
Yeah, damn the Darrows. Yeah, absolutely. And that, you could get into the shaver stuff, and then you'd really, because Steiger totally rode the shaver wave too. You could definitely get into that.
Yeah. Well, I think that was like Fred Chrisman's claim was that he was somewhere over in Asia fighting underground creatures in those old tunnels too. So early on.
Mm-hmm.
I have one of I think it's Amazing Science Fiction, either Amazing or Astounding. Can't remember now. That where Chrisman is writing about that. His awesome. Wild claims. Yeah.
Was he the one who said he machine gunned them, or is that some other guy?
Yeah, okay. That's the one I'm talking about. You know the one. Yeah.
Take this.
Yeah, I mean that's what's great when you have the old magazines, and sometimes you can find like the first printing of these wild claims, which is awesome. It's hard to find,
random illustrations that they would make to accompany them, which would often not be included in any paperback version, or
Right. Yeah, because as you say, they're very cheaply printed, so they didn't have a lot of room for the illustrations, but.
If you're lucky, you'll get a map, or I got one more really interesting. One of my favorites is this early cattle mutilation thriller called The Mutilators from Major Books. Mervyn Casey.
Mervyn Casey.
Which was
that sounds like a made-up name.
I think it is. I don't think he has any other credits I could find, so I think it's just a total pseudonym. 1976. Okay, not super early, but still pretty early as far as like taking pop culture advantage of the cattle mutilations. And this one actually gets the way it got mentioned in the nonfiction book Mute Evidence by Daniel Kagan and Ian Summers. They just mentioned this as because it's about human mutilate, that goes from because that's the whole tension with the cattle mutilation and the whole drama is, ooh, what if they start doing it to people? So in this book, that's what happens. But again, it's under 200 pages long, lean thriller. I think I gave it 3 stars when I reviewed it. Just clean and lean and mean, does everything it needs to do, just right on point, doesn't over explain itself, keeps the mystery going. So that one, yeah. And that also interesting though, the cover this could totally be a random modern Western cover, just it's a guy being hung and some other cowboys are looking at him. There's no flying saucer on it or black helicopters or even a dead cow or anything. So that's probably just generic art they threw on there.
Yeah. Repurposed from another.
Oh, just like Night of the Saucers here uses these little flying saucer models, which I've seen on other books too. And then one of Otto Binder's other books uses the flying submarine from Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I don't know if you remember what that craft looked like. Yeah, uses that as a UFO, just a UFO on the cover. It's the Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea flying submarine.
Yeah. Man, some of these old paperbacks, they're like the B movies of Forteana, like they're
well, they didn't care too much about copyright either.
Right. Yeah. It seemed like there's like a good amount of exploitation and cheapness and cheap thrills and
luridness. Yeah.
Sensationalism.
Yeah.
All good stuff. Now you do have an Elvis book that I can see behind you. That's the What Happened.
Yeah. This is straightforward exploitation. 3 of his closest companions tell a shocking, bizarre story. Yeah, Red West, Sonny West, and Dave Hebler, as told to Steve Dunleavy. Yeah, just a last days of Elvis, what went wrong, Gotterdammerung, really like that genre of the celebrity, exploitation. It's a thick one. I read it long ago. I should read it again because I don't remember much about it. That's alongside that one grabbed my eye. That one happened to grab my eye. Alongside the Forteana, I collect a lot of science fiction, specific books like that might grab my interest, like the Elvis one. Here's a nice old JFK, The Case for Conspiracy, nice old paperback.
Nice.
Which happened to grab my eye. This is a Manor book from 1976, so like maybe the second wave of the JFK books right after.
Yeah, I have way too many JFK conspiracy books.
I don't, just because then I would have a whole shelf of them. So, but
do you have the Lincoln conspiracy one?
Yes, yeah, that's around here somewhere. Yeah. God, I don't know where it is, but yep, that's around here somewhere. I also have a lot of shark books. Got the Noah's Ark tie-in for the Sun Classics movie, The Search for Noah's Ark. Got that one. Oh, got a lot of the In Search of tie-ins.
Those are cool.
Yeah, got a lot of those. They're very well. Oh, In Search of Dracula, great book. There's also an In Search of Frankenstein. There's a sequel trying to do the same thing for Frankenstein that it did for Dracula, and I just happened to be lucky enough to see it right here.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have both of those.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah, Radu Florescu. I think he taught somewhere near me. I think he was a professor of Near East history in Boston somewhere. Yeah. Yep. And there's another guy that I had talked about before in one of my short-lived video series that I did Dracula was a woman.
Oh my God, that's.
But he was friends with Florescu, and his name is not coming to my mind right now. But he has a hilarious author photo where he's basically dressed like Dracula.
Oh my God.
I'll have to send it to you.
Good, please do. these old paperbacks like didn't give you that, but I know Steiger in the 80s, he started wearing a cowboy hat and like, a leather jacket and started really playing up like the Western cowboy new age vibe.
Oh, Raymond T. McNally is the
Oh
guy's
yeah,
name. Yeah,
he's co-writer, yeah.
right. Yeah, so they did work together. Yeah. So, um, but yeah, uh, a lot, a lot of wild personalities out there. So,
Yeah.
and that's half the fun. I feel like I spent my younger years just reading these books and then putting them aside and not really thinking so much about the authors or where they came from or the writers themselves, or necessarily thinking about the people in the stories beyond what the stories were.
Uh-huh.
It's just like I always had this idea in my head of like, oh, there was this ghost story once, or there was this
Uh-huh.
one UFO case. But then when you really like interrogate who the writers of the stories are and the investigators or the subjects of the stories themselves, sometimes it's like you find all this really wacky, interesting stuff, which
Absolutely.
can go a number of ways.
Yeah.
But in the pulpy paperback world, it leans toward hilarity a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So like I said, I do very much appreciate the work that you do, and especially pointing out the problematic stuff, having a sense of humor about it, and showcasing the weird and the sleazy and the pulpy and the really fun stuff on your blog.
Well, thank you, AP.
So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, it
I
blew my mind a couple times because I think there was once or twice I would share some story I found in a Fate magazine on Twitter, and you'd be able to give me this whole like publication history of that story, and I'm like, this is outstanding.
When the stars align, yeah. When the stars align,
Right.
it works out like that. Yeah.
So listeners, definitely go check out paperbacks.of-the-gods.blogspot.com, which and you've got a handy keyword bar on the side. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
For
um
authors and subject matter and maps, post a lot of maps. So if you want to look at a bunch of old maps, you can just click on the tag and you'll see a bunch of
yeah,
maps. Thank
Bermuda
you.
Triangle map. Yeah.
Yes. Which the latest one is just out of, I think, the Saga Bermuda Triangle Special Edition from 1976, I think, which was a
Yeah.
all Bermuda Triangle Special Magazine Edition. Which this big, not a centerfold, but in the center was the 2-page Bermuda Triangle map.
Yeah, and then you had a Loch Ness map up on there too.
Yeah.
One of the map.
Oh, I've got a and that's an ongoing series where I try and find new Bermuda Triangle maps and new Loch Ness maps that I haven't seen before and
Yeah.
post those online.
And you upload videos to your YouTube as well?
Yeah, basically just any old paranormal documentaries, some paranormal thrillers, like old public domain type stuff. Again, just like with the books, it just has become like this staggering obsession of just, I think I'm over 200 videos now, and it's nothing. I'm just uploading them. This is not, you know, my content. This is just literally
Right.
just old movies that are being uploaded for the sake of people watching them, to see them. Including a lot of classic UFO documentaries. Overlords of the UFO, probably one of my favorites of all time. And then also stuff like paranormal self-help videos from the 80s and 90s. Stuff like how to learn magic, how to do crystal work, psychic hotline stuff. I've uploaded a little bit of too. There's
Nice.
that. Did you watch that very good documentary about Miss Cleo, AP?
I didn't. I meant to. I forgot all about it though.
It's very, very, very good. It's really good. Because I just threw up a couple of just her old like half-hour promotional, call me now. But the documentary goes very, very well in depth about the business behind her. Really, she's a really tragic figure. This woman who exploited people and was exploited.
Right.
Yeah, so that's my recommendation is for everyone, if they haven't seen the Miss Cleo documentary, to go watch that, because that
Okay.
also points to, again, the underside of all of this genre type stuff. You know, because she was a wacky character on TV who, you know, for wacky infomercials, and yet, you know, there's a reality underneath everything, even
Yeah.
caricature.
Yeah, I mean, there's layers upon layers of all of this stuff. So, and it's really fascinating to keep peeling them back because you never know what you're gonna find. Yeah. Okay. Well, where can people find you online if they want to like follow you on social media?
Oh
You're
God,
still on Twitter?
I'm still on the Twitter. Yeah. I'm on the Blue Sky. Nobody's over there. It's kind of a ghost town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Twitter, or just go to the blog and just you know, dig through what I've posted, or see if I post anything new. Um, I got lots of people would like to comment on the YouTube videos that they remember this film or that film from a kid. The Orson Welles Nostradamus film, The Man Who Saw Tomorrow. That one, tons of people just love. Or so like, oh my God, you know, so many people talk about seeing it either on tape or on HBO as a kid in the '80s. So that I really liked. I liked seeing that. I liked seeing people react to a memory like that and then being able to watch it again.
Yeah. Hell yeah, man. That's really cool. I'm glad that's out there for people, and I know a lot of my listeners will be happy to know that those are available to them. So, so thanks again. Thanks for coming on, man, and thanks for all the fine work you do.
Well, thank you, AP, for having me on and for just having everybody on that you do, just to like talk about stuff in a way that's not, you know, I get so sick of like the disclosure and the monetization and the you know, the personality and the, you know, it's all gamification. So it's nice to have a space like yours where it's just talking to people, you know, about what they are interested in or what they know or what they've experienced in a way that's just actually like, you know, just person to person. And it feels so much, it's so authentic to me. And it just, yeah, thank you for doing that is what I want to say.
Oh man. Well, you're welcome, man. So, listeners, uh, um, we will see you next time, I guess. I don't even know how to end this now. We're just sitting here complimenting each other. So, uh, all right.
Oh boy.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.